Introduction. Hello. Welcome to the Emergency Monologues. My name is Morgan. I'll be your paramedic host for this evening. 4 years ago, when I started working for Toronto EMS, every call I did was so cool. It was all fresh, it was exciting, and everything was awesome. When I drove lights and sirens, when I went into the subway to wake up a drunk person, even if I was driving an old lady to the hospital because she hadn't pooed for 3 days. It was cool, it was fresh, and it was exciting, and I wanted to document it. I wanted some kind of record of it, not just for myself, but for my children. I have 3 young kids, and I wanted them to know what kind of an exciting job their dad had when they were young. But as you're going to discover, these stories don't make for very good children's bedtime stories. No, I still write, but not as often. After 4 years, the thrill, the romance of being sent into Allen Gardens to discover which drunk person the drive-by caller on a cell phone was concerned about is not quite as exciting as it used to be. You're going to see 45 stories on this wheel here, and obviously we're not going to have time for all of them. So what I'll do is I'm going to spin the wheel, and we're going to let fate and the wheel of misfortune decide what stories get told. Okay. Disclaimer. Now, the stories that you are going to hear tonight are by no means reflective of the opinions, values, standard operating procedures, or policies of Toronto EMS or any other EMS service. The behavior that you see depicted by paramedics in these stories is by no means encouraged or condoned by Toronto EMS or any other EMS service. In fact, you know what? Let's just say that the stories are all made up. We'll say that it's all fiction. Let's just make it simple. Let's say that any similarity to anyone who's living or dead is entirely coincidental. Now, there is a bit of risk in this process in that basically I don't know what stories are going to come up next, what's going to come up next, which is very much like my job. I can't promise you that we're going to have the smoothest transitions, that we'll have the finest segues, the most appropriate dramatic arc, or the finest dramatic denouement. At this point, I'm kind of hoping it's not just one dead baby story after another. But very much like life, we are all in this together. And very much like life, I think it's going to be okay. So, let's give it a shot. Okay. No longer gasping. So we get a call to a nursing home. And as we're driving to the nursing home, the call was for Delta, which is a very high priority, lights and sirens call. A high priority, difficulty breathing. It says patient is gasping. So we're barreling along, lights and sirens, when we get an update that downgrades it to a Charlie. It's a lesser priority now. It's not quite so high. And the update is that the patient is no longer gasping. And so I say to my partner, who is new, I say, keep driving lights and sirens. Let's just keep going to this. And so we barrel on, and as we arrive, we find that the reason the patient is no longer gasping is because she's dead. Which is classic nursing home. We arrive, there's no nursing staff around whatsoever, nobody to help us, to direct us to the patient or tell us what's wrong. And again, in classic form, they didn't realize that she had died. They only noticed she wasn't so noisy. Girl with leg caught in bicycle. So we get a call to the Gerrard and Parliament area for a 4-year-old girl who has her leg caught in a bicycle. And what has happened is it's one of those bikes, pedal bike, where you can't pedal backwards, where the backwards makes the brake. And so she has somehow managed to get her leg caught between the arm that attached to the pedal and the frame of the bicycle. And she has jammed it down in there and she can't get out. And she is very upset. And I arrive, and she is screaming like only a 4-year-old can. I don't know if anyone has a 4-year-old in the audience, or if anyone's ever been exposed to a 4-year-old in the audience. But if you've ever seen one scream, then you know what I'm talking about. And unfortunately, because it is her leg that's caught, I am down at her leg, which makes her screaming part here, basically at my ear level. And so she is screaming into my ear and beating my shoulders constantly. Ah! And so I'm trying to assess, and I'm getting all like worried because she is screaming so fanatically that I'm pretty sure, for all I know, this leg is broken. She has fallen over, she's broken something. And the other thing that I do know for sure is that she's not circulating blood. And so I'm concerned that she's gonna lose the blood to her foot and to her toes. And so basically, I cannot get her safely out without causing her a huge amount of distress. So I make the call to say, all right, let's call the firefighters. Let's get them in here. We'll get them to bring the jaws of life. They'll be very proud of themselves. And they'll arrive. They'll wipe the sleep from their eyes, and they'll pry open the bicycle, chop it in half, set her free. They'll pose for the sun, and then, I'll be in the background doing paperwork, right? And so that's, but I think at this point it is that important that we get this girl's leg out of the bicycle. So I decide, okay, fine, let's make the call, let's do it. Fire, boom. So I call for the fire. A bystander says, there's a bicycle store, Cycle Solutions on Parliament. I don't think they'd mind me mentioning them. They say, there's a bicycle store right around the corner. Do you want me to call them? And I say, that's a great idea. Sure, give them a call. I turn my back. He makes a cell phone call. Less than a minute later, a guy comes walking around the corner with a toolbox. He sits down, removes the crank, takes the leg off. Not the leg, sorry. Takes the leg of the bicycle, the crank on the bicycle. Yeah, he surgically removes the leg. So he takes the crank off the bicycle, sets her free. She immediately runs to her mommy. She's fine. She's not hurt. Fire comes around the corner. He's putting it back together, fixing the bike like it's brand new, like it was never touched. Fire comes around the corner. I got to do one of my favorite things on my job, which is to wave to fire and say, that's okay. We don't need you. Go back to your barbecue. It's fine. Your bed's still warm. I know. You've got your jammies under your bunker gear. Move along. The beauty of this story is that actually I nominated that guy from Cycle Solutions on Parliament for a community service award as a civilian for assisting EMS in an emergency situation. And he won. So I was very happy for him. There was a ceremony up at headquarters. He had a little plaque. It was all very classy. Cycle Solutions Parliament. Before I do the story titled Bringing Dope to 42 Station, I want you to know that I have thoroughly consulted my lawyers, and it's all good as a piece of dramatic fiction. So, someone fictional is working in the ambulance, and he happens to be new at this time, and he happens to be on probation. It's his first 6 months, and so basically anything he does, he can be fired for without just cause. And he's working NEA, which is non-emergency ambulance. And what that means, that's like you're doing your transfers, basically. Like, so somebody needs, say, kidney dialysis, so you take them from a nursing home into a hospital, they have their kidney dialysis. Or perhaps somebody had chemotherapy, so you bring them from chemo back home again. It's all non-emergency. It's all through Toronto Ambulance, but it's not your 911 response calls. So So I'm working that, and I'm working with a partner. And let's say, okay, now, to give you a sense of time on this, this is like 4 years ago. Same-sex marriage was just being legalized in Ontario and was very much part of the news. He and I had differing values, differing opinions on this. I was on the side of human rights, compassion, and logic. And let's say that he was on the side of bigotry, ignorance, and hate. And so we're, going back and forth, and we're discussing this, and it's getting more and more heated, to the point where we're yelling at each other, using very offensive terminology, and basically we decided that, at this point, we have to change the subject. Let's talk about something else, because we're going to kill each other. And so he, for some bizarre reason, brings up legalizing marijuana, because that's not a hot button issue. And so I am on the opinion that very few of the calls that we do, very few of my workload is related to marijuana-related calls. Marijuana overdoses generally result in overeating of Doritos and not in any kind of violence or any kind of accidents of any kind. And again, don't get me wrong, like I enjoy a drink as much as the next person. But probably more than most of you in the audience, actually. But most of my call volume in the ambulance, especially working downtown, my station is Richmond and Church, so I do the club district as well as doing all of the Yonge Street core, is alcohol related. And so that would be alcohol related to violence, car accidents, just plain falling down, being unconscious, those kinds of things. And so I'm saying, well, if you want to start with banning something, really, you have to start talking about alcohol. Anyway, he's like, marijuana is the gateway to heroin, whatever. And so anyways, we're having like this heated argument all day, and all I can think about is getting high. And so, towards the end of my shift, at the end of my shift, haha, lawyers. And so at the end of my shift, when my shift is over, on my way home, I pick up a little something. And now, unfortunately, because I was new and I wasn't used to shift work and whatever, and I'm all tired, and so I forget that it's there. And it's in my jacket, and I hang my jacket up, and I go along with my life, and I go to bed, and I do everything, and the next day I wake up, and I get my jacket back on, and I go back to work. Now, the thing you have to know is that at the time, I wasn't working at Richmond and Church. At the time, I was working at Kingston Road and Warden. And the thing you need to know about Kingston Road and Warden is that's called 42 Station. And 42 Station is where all of the supervisors and all of the upper management and basically everyone who could fire me all have their offices, and me and my lowly ambulance. And so whatever, I'm not thinking of anything. I arrive, 7 o'clock in the morning. I walk in for my shift, perky as a daisy. I walk in, and the first thing my partner says to me in the garage is, "Morgan, do you smell pot?" And I'm like, No, I don't know what you're talking about. And he says, "Man, I smell pot, like really strong. Like it's like really strong." And I'm like freaking out because I'm on probation. And so I'm thinking, this fictional character rather, is thinking that that this could be very, very bad. And so I immediately run off of city property, and I take a rubber glove and I put a little something into the, let's just say that I was shopping for herbs on the way home, and I picked up a little fresh oregano. Anyway, and so I'm putting a little something into a plastic rubber glove, and I tie a knot in it, and I take that glove and I drop it into another glove, and I tie a knot in it, and I take that glove and drop it into another glove, and I tie a knot in it, and I hide it under a little bush far away from the station, and I leave and I continue on my day. Now, the other thing that's important is at the time, there's a little bit of, how should I say this, problems with a certain paramedic who was being investigated for criminal activities on the job. Unrelated to me, unrelated to anyone, bad apple. Anyway, but he was being investigated. And so I, at my own station, because he was, I won't say who he was, but he was not a blue shirt. He was above that. And so he happened to be at my station. And so I knew full well that they had like sting operations set up because I had witnessed them. I had seen like undercover cops jump out of nowhere. I had seen like hidden cameras set up. So I am terrified when I finally go to pick up my little something something at the end of my shift, thinking, of course, that like there's, hidden cameras around and there's dope. Every time a dog walks by, I'm like, you're a dope sniffing dog. And, but essentially, I got my little something something and I went home and it was all well. Bashing in a door. I have a saying that I have created that I would like to share amongst the world of paramedics. It's something I learned from carpentry, and that is check address twice, bash in door once. Anyway, I just pass that on for anyone. So one time we get a call for a short of breath. And so it's a high priority, Delta call. And so fire arrives as well. And so we all arrive at the door and we get there and we knock and we can hear a woman screaming, help me, please help me. And so because of the way she's screaming, we know she's not short of breath. But obviously something else is wrong with her. So, we have the fire guys stick around. And she's like, please help me, help. She's screaming her head off. And so I say to fire, I'm like, well, it seems like we have a confirmation of badness. I forget how you term it in my job, but whatever. A bad situation that is confirmed by a woman screaming, help me, please. And we can't get a superintendent on scene to unlock a door. So I'm like, fire, do your magic. And so fire, you see the captain get all giddy in his eyes, And so he pulls out his portable, radio and he calls for, and he's like, we're going to take a door down. Right? And so he calls for the big boys to come and take the door down. Meanwhile, there's two cops there. And one of the cops is, definitely an old school cop. And I'll use this wall actually to simulate this. And so the cop, old school cop, he's like, fuck, we don't need fire to take a door down. I'll show you how to take a door down. So he walks over to the wall and he goes, and it was kind of like that. In that the wall didn't even quiver. There was nothing. And so there he is like this. And then you just see him go like this. And then you just see him go like this. No, I didn't hit the wall near as hard as he did because I don't want to cripple myself, but he did. And so he sort of slowly stumbles down the hallway, doesn't say a word to anybody, no acknowledgement whatsoever of how he's hurt, and he leaves, walks away, elevator, never see him again. Meanwhile, the fire guys come, right? And so these guys have just walked out of a calendar photo shoot. These guys are wearing the matching gray beater shirts, which makes me wonder if they're issued. And so they're all wearing them. And there's three guys, and they've all got beefy muscles. And one of them has a big sledgehammer, and one of them has a huge axe, and one of them has a giant battering ram. And they come, and they're like puppies, right? And they arrive. And the captain directs them to the door. And the funny thing is, remember there were two cops on scene. The one left probably to long-term disability. And then the other one comes over to the door. And just before these firefighters go to town on the door, I thought this was funny. The other cop is like, hold on. Yeah, it's locked. Which I thought was kind of funny. I figured there's probably a story behind that. But, it's definitely worth double checking. And so these boys go to town, right? And they're smashing with the thing and they're axing and they're loving it because this is the highlight of their week for sure. This is the kind of thing that pulls them away from a barbecue. They're okay for this, right? Anyway, so they hack their way through. We get inside and the woman has been screaming the whole time. And unfortunately, it has taken longer than I would like it to have taken to gain access to this poor woman who's clearly in some kind of distress, who clearly has some kind of ungodly, horrible suffering that only several branches of the emergency services can reconcile. And so as she's screaming everything, we all finally break our way through the door. We come in, and she's standing there leaning against the couch saying, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. I have to pee." And we're like, "What?" And it turns out that she's a rather large woman, perhaps the largest woman I've ever seen that could still walk. And she's basically square, in every dimension. And what had happened was that she had been walking from one room to the other, and her a walker had fallen to the ground, and she was unable, due to gravity and weight distribution, to bend over and get her walker. But she was also unable to walk without her walker, and she desperately had to go to the bathroom, which is why she called 911. So we arrived after breaking her door down, which... We'll see how the building deals with that, but that's their story. So we arrive, we ask her what we can do for her. She says she goes to the bathroom, we give her her walker, she walks to the bathroom. As we're leaving, we're saying, "Is there anything else that I can do for you at home?" Because I really don't want to bring her to the hospital, mostly because she has no reason to go to the hospital. She only had to go to the bathroom. And what she says is, she says, "I would love to go to bed and lie on my left side." And the reason for this is because she is unable, once she gets into, she can only access her bed from one side. And once she gets into bed, she can roll this way, but she's not physically able to move enough into her bed to lie on her left side. So what she says is, "Because all of you are here, I would really appreciate, and it would really make me feel good if you could help me lie on my left side before you leave." And so we think that's fair. And so between all of us, we managed to, between sheets and counterbalancing and moving, we get her lying on her left side. We get her comfortable. We say, "Are you okay?" She says, "Yes, I'm fine." We leave, and I think, "There, but by the grace of God, go I." And we walk out the door. Ooh. Edna and the Pooh. So we're working a night shift, my partner and I. And we get a call. This is the pager information. This is like 4 o'clock in the morning. And we get a call to a residence for a 79-year-old woman. This is what it says. Pager says, "79-year-old woman pooed on floor, no other injuries." So you think, all right. So we go and we arrive and we walk in the door, and there's a woman sitting at her dining room table in no distress whatsoever, quite comfortable, sitting, hello, 4 o'clock in the morning. And we walk in the door and she says, "I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for arriving. It's in the kitchen. If you could clean it up, I'm very tired. I'd like to go to bed." Now, the way ambulance works is that people often ask me, you work for the ambulance. Oh, are you an ambulance driver? Oh, do you drive or do you take care of patients?" Well, we both do both. And so everyone who works for the City of Toronto, for Toronto EMS, is trained in being either a driver or what we call the attendant. The driver drives the ambulance and takes all the vital signs and basically does all the work. And the attendant is the one who asks all the questions and makes all the decisions. And we take turns. And so this time it is my partner's turn for him to ask all the questions and make all the decisions. And so I'm kind of curious how he's going to handle this. Because I know that, how can I put this politely? I love him dearly, but he has anger management issues. And so I see him and he's like, "You want me to clean poo off the floor?" And she says, "Yes, if you don't mind cleaning up, please, right away. I'm very tired. I'd like to go to bed." "Ma'am, you called 911 because you had poo on your floor?" And she says, "No, I didn't call 911. I called Lifeline. You called Lifeline? Yes. Can I talk to Lifeline? And she says, sure. All I do is I push this little button on my wrist, bing, and then a phone will ring, and when the phone rings, then you can answer it. That'll be them. And he says, could you do that, please? And she says, sure. And so she pushes the button, and sure enough, bing, a little phone goes off, and he walks over and he picks up the phone, and a voice comes on that says, hi, Edna, it's Lifeline. Have the paramedics arrived? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. We're here now. I'd like to talk to the person who decided calling 911 for poo on the floor was a reasonable thing to do. And she says, oh, that was me. And he says, I would like you to explain to me why poo on the floor is a 911 call worthy of emergency services. And she says, well, our policy is that if someone calls Lifeline, that what we do is we go through the list of people and we call family members one by one. And we try and find someone who's available to come and assist in the situation. And if no one's available to assist in the situation, then we call 911. So you're telling me no one was available? Yes. Do you know why no one was available? Because it's 4 o'clock in the morning and there's poo on the floor to be cleaned up. Would you come and clean up poo at 4 o'clock in the morning if you didn't have to? And she said, well, that's just our policy. Our policy is to go through the names, and then if no one's available to call it, yes, I know that's your policy. And that makes perfect sense if it was a medical emergency. But do you think poo on the floor is a medical emergency? And she says, well, our concern is that later in the evening, Edna might be walking and she might step in the poo and she might fall. And if Edna falls and slips on the poo and hits her head or breaks her hip, well, someone will be liable. And I can see my partner on the phone. And I can see the gears of liability turning in his head. Obviously, it's a taped line recorded to measure your quality of blah, blah, blah. And so he knows now that he's been asked to clean up the poo, and if he doesn't, and she does fall, and she does hit her head or break her hip, that probably he and I will both lose our jobs. So he says, okay. And he puts down the phone, and then Edna says, I have a plan. There's a dustpan in the kitchen. I'd like you to take the dustpan and scoop up the poo, and then take that poo and dump it into my mobile commode, my mobile toilet, which I keep in the kitchen. And he says, okay. So he cleans up the poo and he dumps it into the little mobile commode in the kitchen. And then she says, now, go into the kitchen, and underneath the counter, under the sink, you're going to find a yellow cloth. Take the yellow cloth and use that to wipe up the rest of the poo. That's a disposable cloth. Just throw that in the garbage. And so my partner says, okay. And so he walks into this kitchen and he opens up the cupboard under the sink. There's no yellow cloth. There's only a white cloth. Oh no, don't use the white cloth. The white cloth is reusable. I'm going to wash the white cloth. Find a yellow cloth. I'm telling you, there's no yellow cloth. Yes, there is. If you look, if there's none there, then try checking in the closet over in the other corner of the room. Okay. So he goes and he gets a yellow cloth and he wipes up the poo. You can throw that away. Thank you. And so he throws that away. And we're on our way. Anything else I can do? Yes, if you don't mind now, can you take the white cloth that you found before and use that to wipe up, just use it to wipe up what's left. All the water that was there from when you cleaned up the poo before, just to make sure it's all dry and nice. And then use that and put that in the laundry because that's rewashable. Okay. And so he does that. He gets the white cloth and he wipes up the little residual water that was left and makes it all dry, handy dandy. We get her settled, we get her into bed, and we think the story ends there. But 3 weeks later, we get a call to the same address for the same woman. This time, the call information says, 80-year-old woman, sweater caught in walker, unable to move. We arrive, walk in the door, and there's Edna with her walker, 4 o'clock in the morning, again, middle of the night, sweater caught in there. She says, I'm so glad you're here. I was on my way to the washroom. I have to poo. Well, we know exactly what that means, right? Like, we know she's fully capable of pooing right there on the floor. So we immediately get over there. We take the sweater, pull it out of the wheel. We take the walker, throw it to the side. We each grab a shoulder. We walk her into the kitchen where we know is where she keeps her mobile toilet. We plunker her down onto her toilet, and she says, okay, now go out, leave me some privacy. You boys go wait in the other room. We say, okay. And we walk into the other room. We get into the other room, and I'm looking around, and I see like, oh, it's interesting. There's like balloons and cards and things. And then I hear her say from the other room, it was my birthday. Okay, Edna, that's great. There's some cake on the table. Help yourself. Why, how? Purely self-indulgent, not important. I can skim over it very quickly. This is basically why, how I became paramedic, whatever. I worked as an actor for a long time, worked as a director. I did a lot of work with the homeless, street youth, people with mental illnesses. My specialty is basically popular theater, working with non-actors to create theater about life experiences. This is kind of exciting for me, actually, because it's the first time I've ever done anything about my own life experiences. So I kind of enjoy that. Anyway. Basically, the gist of it is, I had a child. And I started thinking, this theater, social activism gig is all well and good, but I need something that's a little more steady. I need something that pays a little bit of money. And so I started thinking about what I could possibly do. Now, at the time, I was the theater director of a program called Kites, working with street youth. And one of the aspects of this is that we have job mentoring, job shadowing, job encouragement for the youth to help them figure out, what they'd like to do. And one of the youth wanted to be a paramedic. And so one of the other staff members, their job was to basically research what it means to be a paramedic and how you become a paramedic, and to tell that youth. And I'm hearing about it to the youth, and I'm like, I like that job. I'm thinking, I can do that job. That sounds like fun. And so, of course, inevitably, I got laid off. I'm out of work. I still have this idea in my head, oh, paramedic, that wasn't a bad gig. I apply for it. At the time, it's a 1-year program. I'm like, I'm laid off for a year. I'll do a job of paramedics. I'll get rehired again. It'll be awesome. Meanwhile, in the summer, I get a letter in the mail that says, oh, by the way, the program is no longer a 1-year program. It's a 2-year program, but thank you for your interest. And I also find out that Centennial College is located at Warden and St. Clair, which for me, living at Broadview and Danforth, I know you may not think that's far away, but for me, you have to remember Scarborough used to be a different city. And we're not talking about Licks or the beaches Scarborough. We're talking sort of legitimate Scarborough and actual Scarborough. And so for me, that was a radically far distance to go to school. I did it successfully, and was very happy that I did. One of the reasons why I got into paramedics, I thought it would be a part-time program, and I thought, oh, this is sweet. I'm gonna make so fucking much money being a paramedic that I can still do my theater gig on the side, still work with street youth, blah, blah, blah. It'll be great. And then I found out later that Toronto has no part-timers. It's only full-time work, which, I support now. But at the time, I was like, I don't want to work all the time. I kind of want to just work every once in a while. You mean I have to work all the time? So basically, I feel like I kind of got tricked into the work on every step and every level of it, from being a 1-year program to going to Scarborough to working full-time. The moral of the story is I'm glad I did it. I like it. It's a good job. If you want to do it, talk to me afterwards. 2 years, Centennial, blah, blah, blah. Code 5. All right. Code 5, this isn't a story. I could throw a story in there, but whatever. Anyway, Code 5 is our term. What that means is for a patient who's very, very dead. So you have mostly dead, which is workable, right? Mostly dead is, ooh, get out the paddles. And then we have very, very dead. It's like, whoa, don't touch them. That's gross. And so Code 5, it would be your, ooh, don't touch them. That's gross. Code 5, things that would indicate to you that the patient is very, very dead and not worth even trying to save, would be things like decapitated. It's hard to come back from that. Transected, cut in half. If you are decomposing is another good sign that you're no longer alive. Rigor mortis, stiff, obviously. Exposed brain matter, that would be your major car accidents, your gunshots, your subway-related incidents, things like that. Let's see, there's another one. Oh, dependent lividity, that would be, if you ever watch CSI, that comes up on CSI all the time. That would be the one where when you die, basically your heart stops beating, then the blood starts to pool, gravity dependent lividity, and the blood starts to pool whatever's closest to the ground, essentially. So usually most people are lying on they're not standing up the way I am, so it's kind of hard to, if they did die standing up, it would all be in their feet. But usually they're like lying down, like this, and then essentially what you see is whatever's closest to the ground, which is generally their buttocks or their shoulder, you start to see purple, and the purple starts to grow, and the greater that it grows, the deeper that it is, the longer they've been dead. And it's a way that on CSI, and in real life, oddly enough, they measure how long someone's been dead. I'll just tell you that paramedics love Code 5s. There's a few reasons that we enjoy Code 5s. One is simply that because once you establish the patient is very, very dead and not worth saving, then obviously you can slow right down because they don't get any worse, and essentially from there it's all kind of fun. Then from there it's all like, ooh, he's dead. I wonder how he died. And then it's all like, and then you get to be CSI, and you can be like, and you're like, ooh, look, there's some blood over here, and look, there's a glass with maybe a lipstick mark, and so essentially it's kind of fun that you get to sort of go around and, you don't go around. What you essentially actually do is you trace your footsteps exactly backwards so that you don't contaminate any evidence, unlike firefighters who are called evidence destroyers. And so essentially you work your way out of the scene, not harming anything, so that when the police come, you tell them, yeah, I walked in, I established it was Code 5, rigor mortis, then I opened the fucking windows because it stank like hell in here, and then I traced my steps out again. And then the police are always like, oh, that's very nice, I appreciate that. And you're like, yeah, thanks. A few times I've had situations where police are, and then because it's a potential crime scene, sometimes it is definitely a crime scene, but anytime someone's found dead, it's a potential crime scene. You have to wait until police arrive. And so like a few times, there's a time, I think it was last year, where I had to sit in somebody's apartment for almost 6 hours waiting for police to become available. There had been like a whole lot of emergencies, one after another. Police would arrive, and then they get like a call, like, oh, gunshots at wherever. Like, oh, sorry, I gotta go. And I'd be like, yeah, okay. And so we have to stay there securing the scene basically until police come. Once police come, they establish, oh, it's a crime scene. Police take care of things, blah, 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 blah. And then we can leave. The bottom line is Code 5s are kind of fun, kind of interesting, and if you're going to be on scene for like 6 hours, you can play games like Find the Porn, because it's one of those things. I'll tell you, it makes you rethink about what you leave behind when you're dead, because every guy's apartment's got it in there somewhere, and you got hours to wait, so whatever. Anyway, Code 5. That's all. I can retire now. All right. So essentially, we get a call. We get a call for a 23-year-old woman unconscious in a hallway in a very nice apartment building in Forest Hill. All right. So we're on our way up there. As we arrive, we see that there's 2 police cars and 2 cabs outside. And we're like, oh, interesting, whatever. And so we, get out of our vehicles and we're walking in and we find out a little bit more of the story. What happened was, the one cabbie tells us, that he had gotten the call for a woman who was drunk in a bar and wanted to go home. And so he drives her home. She's like very, very drunk. And so he gets out, helps her walk, and gets her up to her apartment, where she realizes that she left her purse in the bar and promptly falls unconscious in front of her apartment. So the cabbie is thinking like, whoa, I've got an unconscious woman on the floor, and he doesn't know what to do. So he calls 911, and he heads downstairs. Now, meanwhile, unbeknownst to him, her friends are in a bar, the same bar, because they were friends and drinking together. And so her friends realize she left her purse behind, and they say, oh my, she left her purse behind. And so they go to her apartment to bring her purse, knowing that she doesn't have her keys. They pass, unknowingly, the cabbie on his way out. They go up. The cabbie waits, police arrive, we all go upstairs. We arrive at her hallway, and we find an empty hallway with no young drunken girl in it. And so now you may, out in the audience, may be thinking, oh, no problem. Well, not really. Because for us, because there was a concern that there was somebody who was drunk and unconscious, we have to confirm that she's okay. Because for all we know, she has been, scooped up by the creepy man who lives across the hall, and, bad things are happening to her as she's being shipped off to other countries. And so, it's important for us to confirm that she's okay and that everything is well and that all is safe, right? And so we, knock on her door, and there's no answer. And we have the superintendent with us with a big walking set of keys. And so, walking, that's not a word, honking is what I mean. I got stuck between honking and wad, anyway, whatever. And so the superintendent's there, and he's got his keys. Cop knocks like only a cop can. Boom, 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 boom. No answer. We're like, okay, super, crack her open. Super pulls out all of his keys. Yeah, super, yeah, you stay here. We're going to go check it out. The cops, my partner, and myself, we walk in. We're like, hello, ambulance, hello, police, hello, anybody? It's like, it's all quiet, right? We're walking around the apartment. Hello, anybody? Hello, police, fire, police, ambulance. There's no fire. I don't know why I said that. And it wakes people up sometimes. Ooh, firefighters. And so we're like, walking around the apartment, right, trying to wake them up. And then we get to the bedroom, and we open the door to the bedroom. And again, we're like, ambulance, police, hello, and nothing. But we can see in the bed, there seems to be somebody in the bed. And so again, we're like, I'm telling the right story, right? Yeah, okay. and so we're like, hello. I changed the title recently, so it confuses me sometimes. And so I'm like, hello. And then somebody leaps from the bed, and she's like all freaked out. And this is when I saw perhaps one of the more attractive women I've ever seen in my entire life. And she's wearing a push-up bra and a thong. She is absolutely gorgeous as she stands there going, and I say, it's okay. We're just, ambulance. We got called 911. People are concerned about you. We're just making sure you're okay. You're obviously okay, so we can go. So I say that, and I'm ready to leave when she realizes that she's standing before these four people. My partner is a woman, Candy. We'll get to her later, and two male cops. And she realizes she's standing before all of us. She grabs a sheet off of the bed, pulls it off, and wraps it around herself to cover herself up, and that's when she revealed the other two women that were spooning naked in the bed. And so. And so, naked was an overstatement. Same push-up bra, same thong. From my angle, good enough. And so, I'm like, and at this point also, you have to remember, I was relatively new. As I said before, most of the stories in this show came from my first year on the job. And so at this very moment, I'm thinking, I love my fucking job. I have the best job in the whole world. I can't believe I wasted my time on that theater shit. And so this is all going through my mind, right, as I'm watching this scenario. And so I was much taken as I am now. And now what's important, right, is that perhaps, we don't know, this woman who's jumping around is obviously conscious, alert, breathing normally. She's okay, or everything's fine. The other two women in bed, for all I know, they've had some kind of horrible overdose, must assess and make sure they're okay. Hey, I'm just doing my job. Now, the two cops and myself are all like, and Candy, my partner, she says to me, I'm going to go outside. And I'm going to let you boys take care of this. And she says boys like it's a bad thing. Boys. And she leaves the three of us to be like, and so, so I climb into bed and I'm like, hello. You have to wake up. Hello. And I'm doing all the things that we normally do to wake drunk people up. And those include sternal rub or trap squeeze. And so, I'm trying to wake her up. So remember, trapezoidal squeeze. This is me trapping, squeeze. Like trap, squeeze, sternal rub. Right? And one of the women I get to wake up a little bit, like, oh, what's going on? What are you doing? And I'm like, okay, it's good. And then the other woman, I really can't get her to wake up. And so I'm like debating this. I'm like, well, I don't want to take her into the hospital. I mean, she's at home with friends who can take care of her. But at the same, she's very, very drunk to the point where she can't wake up. And, a little part of me is like, well, what if there are drugs involved? What if she's overdosing before my eyes? Then I really should take her to the hospital and save her life. And not just, leave her here with her naked friends spooning in bed. And so anyway, so I say to the first woman who's, has the sheet wrapped around her, and I'm saying to her, I'm saying, I'm having trouble waking her up. Did you do, and you're not in trouble, and the cops, believe me, they don't care about these kind of things. They're not here to arrest anyone. They're just here to ogle, but really they're here to protect me, but oddly enough, that's, not necessary, but because I can take care of myself, boys. Anyway, and so I'm, saying, to the woman, like, what's happened tonight? Have you done any drugs this evening? And she says, no drugs, no. Honest to God, this is what it is. No drugs, no. And then she climbs into bed with the other two, and now she's spooning with the other two in bed, and she's running her finger from the other woman's shoulder down her body to her ankle and back up again as she repeats over and over, no drugs, no. My friend, she's just a little lonely. She just broke up with her boyfriend and she's a little lonely. So we thought we'd go for a little drink. But no drugs. My friend, she just got a little drunk because she's so lonely. So lonely. And she doesn't have a boyfriend. And I'm processing this information, as are the cops. And part of me is wondering, when do they cue the porno music? Bum, chicka, wow, wow. And I'm trying to figure out my role in all of this, and I'm trying to figure out, what's appropriate in all of this. And basically, I'm not doing a good job of it. Now, had I known that this call is a once-in-a-lifetime call, and that it would never happen to me again, perhaps I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But at the time, I was new enough to think that this is the rest of my life. and so I was still quite nervous and still quite new and thought I would, try and get through it quickly. And so I, left it alone. And so I said, well, I guess if you're okay, then I'm okay. Okay, everyone's okay. All right, okay. All right, I get off at 7 if you want to practice. Okay. and so I left, right? And as we're leaving, one of the cops, and he's like an older gentleman, and he has this big smile on his face, and he says, I'm going to retire now. He says, I want this to be the last call I ever do. He says, I want this to be my last memory of being a police officer. I'm going to put it in my papers right now. And the beauty of it is he did. He had 2 weeks left to retire, but he was like, nope. I'm done today. There you go. Oh. Oh my God. Wait, oh. Oh, endings. I'm sorry. Penis guy. Later. Endings. When paramedics talk about stories, when they tell stories to each other, they just about always leave out the ending. Whether a patient lives or dies is not what it's all about. One of the big reasons that we don't talk about endings is that we don't usually know how it ends. Usually we have the patient and we bring them into the hospital and we give our report to the triage nurse. We'd leave them in a hospital bed. The door is shut. We walk out the door and we never hear about them again. And we don't know. There's no follow-up and we don't know what happens to them. All we know is they had a pulse when we left. Another big reason that paramedics don't talk about endings is that for your own sanity, you can't keep track of your wins and your losses. If you start taking credit for the lives that you save, you've got to take responsibility for the lives that you lose. And believe me, nobody wants to do that. I know for myself, when I'm in a situation, I try not to let the patient outcome be the focus of the call. I try to make sure that I am doing everything that I can at that moment, but I'm not thinking of down the road. There's a few reasons for that. One, basically because I know that my skills, my training, and my treatment at that moment is only one part of a much bigger picture which affects patient outcome. One of the biggest factors that affects outcome is time. How long it takes for us to get to a patient. More times, and I mean like, I'm not going to give you I'm not going to say weekly, but like more times than I want to admit is true. I have been told by dispatch, okay, this is just a heads up, but I'm just going to let you know, you're the only available ambulance that I have to respond to a call from Eglinton to the lake and from Yonge Street to Pickering. Recently, I was at Bloor and Sherbourne with my partner, and we got a call, Delta, which is almost the highest priority, Delta response for a short of breath for a child with difficulty breathing at Bathurst and Finch. So from Bathurst and Finch, we were the closest available ambulance at Sherbourne and Bloor. Now you can make your own conclusions on that. Our conclusions are that we believe that we need to have more ambulances on the road so that we can have more paramedics, more ambulances, so that we are able to save more lives. I know what you're thinking, just when I thought I had a play with no political agenda. But I do think it's important. And so that's about it. I mean, so ends my public service announcement for this evening. I hope you guys had a good evening. I had a wonderful time. You're an awesome crowd. I really appreciate you coming. If you're interested, I have a book version of that has all of the stories that you heard, plus I think 15 or so more. Unfortunately, it's on like a tiny microfiche print, which you should have a magnifying glass. Anyway, if you're interested, I have them down here, the $15. There's also t-shirts available if you want to get one of those. There's a guest list up there. Please sign it if you're interested in finding out about any other future shows that I'm doing. For example, September 17th, the Transat Club with Girls with Glasses. And thank you all for coming.